The room went still the moment she touched the hem of her shirt. Every murmur, every shuffle of boots on the polished floor faded into silence. The Admiral's eyes, sharp and seasoned from decades of war, followed her every move, but nothing could have prepared him for what she was about to show. She lifted the fabric slowly, her fingers trembling not from weakness, but from the weight of memory. The pale light from the office window caught the jagged lines that ran across her ribs, deep, angry scars, the kind no uniform or metal could ever hide. The Admiral's breath caught in his throat. He had seen the aftermath of explosions, the burned and broken bodies pulled from wreckage, but there was something about these scars, and the way she stood while showing them, that struck him deeper than any battlefield scene ever had. Her name was Lieutenant Mara Vance. A name the Admiral knew only from a stack of reports and commendations, the kind you read between deployments without really seeing the person behind the ink. She was younger than he'd imagined, but her eyes, those eyes, were older than any soldier's should be. "I want you to know, sir," she began, her voice steady, "these aren't just wounds. They're the reason I'm still alive." The Admiral frowned, leaning forward across his desk. "Explain." Mara took a slow breath, grounding herself before the tide of memory pulled her under. "It was 14 months ago. South of Kargas Point. Our patrol ship, the Halcyon, was ambushed. We didn't see the mines until it was too late. The first blast tore open the starboard side. I was on deck when it happened. I remember the heat, the scream of metal, and then, nothing but water swallowing me whole." She paused. Her hand brushed lightly over the scars, tracing them as if they were a map back to that day. "When I came to, I was pinned under debris. A beam had smashed into my chest, splintering my ribs. Every breath felt like a knife. But the fire was spreading, and if I didn't move, I'd burn with the ship." Her voice caught for the first time, and the Admiral noticed her knuckles whiten as she clenched her shirt hem. "I pushed until the pain nearly blacked me out. I don't know how I got free, only that when I did, I could hear crew members screaming below deck. I should have swum for it. Any sane person would have. But I couldn't leave them." She told him how she dove into the smoke-filled corridor, how the heat made her skin blister, how the air tasted like burning oil. She found Ensign Ralston first, unconscious, arm trapped under twisted metal. Her ribs screamed with every pull, but she dragged him clear. Then there was Chief Vega, coughing blood, barely able to stand. And finally, 2 cadets so young they still flinched when addressed by rank. One by one, she got them into the water, clinging to a drifting life raft until a rescue cutter arrived. By the time she was hauled aboard, her lungs were scorched, her ribs shattered, and she was barely conscious. But everyone she'd pulled from that corridor survived. The Admiral's jaw tightened as the weight of her words sank in. He knew loss. He had buried too many under folded flags. But here she stood, battered, yes, but unbroken, proof that sometimes sheer will could defy death itself. "You didn't mention the extent of your injuries in your report," he said quietly. She shook her head. "Reports don't heal wounds, sir. And they don't carry shame." "Shame." The Admiral's voice hardened. "You saved their lives." Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw the storm behind them. "And lost my place in the fleet. The doctors said I'd never pass a combat fitness test again. I've been stuck in logistics ever since. They call it an honorable reassignment. I call it a cage." The Admiral rose from his chair. His metals clinked faintly as he stepped around the desk, standing just inches from her. For a long moment, he simply looked, not at the scars, but at the steel in her spine, the unwavering defiance in her stance. "Mara Vance," he said finally, his voice low but unyielding, "the fleet needs fighters. But fighters aren't always the ones holding the rifle. Sometimes they're the ones who refuse to let others die, no matter the cost. That's the kind of leader I want in my command." She blinked, unsure if she'd heard him right. "I'm reinstating you to active service," he continued. "Not because you can run the fastest, but because when the fire closes in, you run toward it. The next crew you lead will need that." The tightness in her chest wasn't from old injuries anymore. It was something else, something warm and fierce. She straightened, saluting with perfect form. "Yes, sir." The Admiral returned the salute, but his eyes softened. "And Lieutenant, wear those scars proudly. They're the mark of a warrior who kept her oath." As Mara left his office, she could feel the weight of her past, not as a chain, but as armor. The scars would never fade. Neither would the pain. But neither, she knew, would the lives she'd saved. And for the first time in 14 months, she didn't feel caged. She felt ready. If you want, I can also extend this into a full 55-minute YouTube script with pacing, beats, and emotional arcs so it fits the exact runtime you mentioned. That way, the story flows perfectly for narration and audience engagement.